purpose. Purpose. Wouldn't it be great to work for an organization with purpose? Not posters, not platitudes, but purpose. Nothing more gets you up and going than knowing what your purpose is, knowing which direction you're trying to get into. Nothing more frustrating than sitting there in the starting block. Yeah, I'm going to use a running analogy here. And you don't know which way to go. You're driven, you're excited, but you don't know what that purpose is. Well, your organization should have figured that out by now. And our guest today, Stan Phelps, he's going to help us get there. Hold on. I'm Russel Lolacher. This is Relationships at Work, your employee experience and workplace culture podcast. Hi, how you doing? Welcome to the show. So thrilled to have Stan on. I've been connected with Stan for years and years. We were actually trying to remember how long it's been in, a decade or so. He was actually very generous to be one of the very first guests on an old podcast I did called The Upsell. It was my customer service podcast I did back in the day. Didn't last very long, but he did take some time out of his very busy schedule, even busier now, to talk about customer experience, customer service. It was the origins of my workplace culture and employee experience relationships talk. And he's one of the guys that get me there. He's the goldfish guy. What does that mean? Well, he's written so many books. About 16, actually, if you count every co-author and niche variation of the topic. The goldfish idea is a metaphor he uses in different ways, depending on his topic. But it could be the marketplace. I think that's generally what it's used for. Or the culture of an organization. Anyway, it's a good metaphor because the man has over 5,000 case studies of employee experience, customer experience, workplace culture, word of mouth. He's done his research and he knows what he talks of. So I didn't even know that he was actually about to launch Black Goldfish, which is basically a culmination of all the work he's done to date. I'm looking forward to checking that book out. It's the man's done some work, so I'm excited to check it out myself and support him as he's taking the time to support me and us today. What are you going to get out of this? Well, we're going to talk about purpose, as I said off the top. How your organization could think a little differently, where it might need to go to get that purpose if they feel a little lost right now. How your employees can be impacted by a lack of purpose. Purpose. If you want to start the drinking game now of hearing me say purpose enough times, well, that's on you. I'm not going to encourage that kind of behavior. And here comes Stan. And on the show today, Stan Phelps. And here is why he's awesome. Author or co-author of, let's see, okay. I have to take a deep breath before I get into your library here, Stan. Purple, pink, gold, and diamond, yellow, green, red, blue, silver, gray, goldfish books. I think that's 10, man. I think that's 10. So his books, everything from personalization to attracting customers to word of mouth to employee engagement and purpose. Hold that thought because we're going to get into that a bit later. He is a TEDx speaker on GLUE, which is giving little unexpected extras. The man loves an acronym. He was part of IBM's New Way of Engaging Futurist program. And fun fact, he wrote a book about bar tricks, riddles, jokes, and stories, 101 of them. The man is a Renaissance man. Hi, Stan. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Russell. Yeah, lots of 10 different colors in the Goldfish series. Not that I'm counting. With 2.0 and industry specific, there's 16 different Goldfish books. So
you're a hell of a rainbow, sir. Hell of a rainbow. That is. You're like, I see the rainbow, and I'm like, I can do better. I can add more colors to that. So well done.
And just as a footnote, I've only ever written one really good book, which you'd mentioned is called Bar Tricks, Bad Jokes, and Even Worse Stories.
Oh yeah, I saw that, and I'm like, oh, I need to have that in my heart and in my library. I need to have that. So Today we're talking about purpose. You've dove into this in two of your books, Red and Green Goldfish. So, as purpose is defined, the reason for which something is done or created, or for which something exists, one's intention. That's my Google definition of purpose. How would you define it if we're talking about the workplace?
I agree with that definition. I would say simply it is reason for being, right? And as it relates to your organization, the workplace, it is typically whatever the founders kind of founding premise was for starting the company. And to steal the French, it's the am I going to say it right? Raison
D'entre?
d'etre. Yeah,
D'etre.
yeah.
I'm not French.
Yeah, it is just your reason for being, and again, a lot of times it is found within why, kind of the founder's vision for the company. Who do you serve and why do you exist?
Whose responsibility is it to be a purpose-driven company? Is it the organization to give employees a purpose, or do they have to bring that to the table on their own?
I think it starts with the organization. That to me is a key driver in terms of onboarding and recruiting the right people into the organization, that they can feel like they're part of something. But I also believe that it is the responsibility of the employee to find purpose in what they do, each and every day, and in their role, how do they contribute to that overarching reason for being?
Vision mission can't go ignored if we're talking about purpose, because you hear purpose statements as something within organizations, but there also is that vision, that mission. Are they interconnected? Is it just one feeds into the other? What's the relationship there?
I think the words mission and vision get interchanged, and I think that's wrong. I think you have a purpose slash vision statement. So to me, that's the North Star of why your organization exists. It may be something like the North Star that it obviously guides you, but it may be something that you actually never actually achieve and get to that place. But it becomes that kind of lofty star in the sky. To me, a mission is just, whether it's annual or 3-year or 5-year, the mission can change every so often. It's just almost the tacking that you do as you go on that journey to achieve that vision and purpose. I think there's a big difference. I think a lot of times people get confused between the two.
You're not wrong. I always ask, and I think I mentioned this before the podcast. If I approach somebody, I'm like, "So, what's your vision statement?" And if they're like, I don't know." I'm like, by definition, if you don't know it, it's a horrible vision statement. It has to be short, memorable, inspiring, future state. Like there are characteristics to a great vision statement, and it's amazing how many people are like, I don't know what it is." Well, then how can you feel connected to it if it means nothing to you, or you can't, at least tell why you're inspired by it? So I
Right.
couldn't agree more. So let's get more into purpose around the employee engagement side of things. How does the employee's purpose feed in to their engagement? What is the benefit to them to being in a purposeful organization?
Well, I think we all want to feel like we're part of something that's bigger than ourselves, right? That we're contributing to something that's bigger than ourselves. Whether we want to admit that or not, I think that is a huge driver. As it relates to engagement, though, it's a pretty lofty part of engagement. I see it kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like you have stuff that are kind of the building blocks at the bottom, the foundational elements, right? And it's just like, I know we've spoken in the past about customer experience. If you don't get some of the basics right, it doesn't matter what you do to try to wow somebody. It's almost like hygiene, right? If you're not doing the basic stuff to kind of manage things. So that's where the foundation is. The middle of the pyramid for me, Russell, really relates to how do you create a sense of belonging. So that's like feeling like I'm recognized, feeling like I'm part of a team, feeling like I have the flexibility to do what I need to do in my role. The top level, though, of that pyramid, and Maslow would call it self actualization, it's the things that you do, what I call to help your employees become. How do you help them? I call it becoming. So that's training and development. That's things like paying it forward. Like, how do you do things in furtherance beyond just the company to give back to society? And lastly, empowerment. And I think at that kind of top level, and it's so important, really, really is where purpose lives. If you can create that strong base, if you can feel like you're part of a team, and feel like you belong, then the last part is, how do I connect, and how do I give back, and how do I develop? So it's a win for the company, it's a win for me, and it's a win for society.
What is a leader or executive's role in helping with that?
We talked about kind of the bottom of that pyramid. One of the biggest ones on the bottom of that pyramid, I see it, it's what I call the green goldfish of transparency, right? So, how, as a leader, are you opening kind of the window of information? How do you how do you make it very clear when you're making decisions that it's attached, that people understand kind of your intention, but also that you're making those decisions based upon the purpose of the company? And so I think your job as a leader is to create that environment where people understand that you're operating with a sincere interest in their well-being, that you're making decisions on behalf of that purpose. The goldfish book that relates to us is called The Red Goldfish. As a leader, it's about the actions that you take, and how do you do the little things that reinforce that purpose and actually bring it to life.
Organizations are so good at the slogans and so good at the words, but following up on those actions that people are your staff aren't dumb. They're paying attention to things of what you're doing and what you're not doing. So that leads me to my next question is, what is getting in the way for people to be in purpose-driven organizations? How are leaders, how are employees getting in their own way to reach that purpose?
So I think to dial back, I think we have to understand how organizations and modern corporations have developed, right? I think I wrote about in Red Goldfish that we're at what I call the 4.0 of business. And so in the 4.0 of business, you put purpose at the center of everything that you do. Now, if we rewind the clock, and the modern corporation has not been around for more than 150 years, right? But for the first 90 years, the 1.0 of that corporation, who came first, Russell? It was the shareholder, right? Your job as a leader was to do everything to maximize what? The return to that shareholder. And so that was the 1.0, that everything that you did above and beyond that was unnecessary, right? Or, so the 2.0 in the, I would say, the late 60s and 70s really took hold. And that was a realization that maybe you should actually put the customer first, right? And that if the purpose of a business is to actually create and keep a customer. And if you do that correctly, what is the byproduct of that? Well, that's you're going to maximize your return, and you're going to be profitable. Sam Walton once said, he said, there's only one boss, and that's the customer. And he or she has the ability to fire us simply by going and spending their money somewhere else. Now, in the 1990s, I think the 3.0 of business came into the fore. And that was the idea that, yeah, you can focus on the customers all you want, but at the essence, who is delivering that value to the customers? And that's your employees. And you can't have happy, enthused customers unless you have happy, engaged employees. So, starting in the 1990s, a lot of smart companies said, well, we're actually going to put our employees at the center of everything we do, right? And if we have them engaged and we can reinforce the culture with them, then they provide a better experience to the customers. And ultimately, that leads to the bigger profit. Well, 2010 or so, I think we were at the genesis of maybe actually we need to put purpose at the center of everything we do, and start with kind of our why. And that kind of reinforces our who, so the employees that we hire, the how we deliver that experience. And ultimately, if we can do those things, that's going to be able to maximize our profitability. So what I did, Russell, just my co-author Graham Newell and I, we looked at over 300 companies that had a very clear purpose. And we wanted to figure out what archetypes out there, how could we see similarities in various types of purpose? And then more importantly, we looked at this idea of a red goldfish being, how do you bring that purpose to life? What are the little things that you do to reinforce so your purpose just doesn't on the wall of your company, right? Your purpose is in the little things you do for your employees, for your customers, and for society to bring that purpose to life.
So, say you're an organization that you're not quite sure that you are a purpose led organization. I mean, a lot of people say it, but at the end of the day, how do you know you are? What are some traits of a purpose led organization? And a follow up question to that is, where do you start to find out if you are and go in that direction?
I think it starts with the vision of the founder. What's that origin story of why they set out on a journey to create the organization? So many times, hopefully the organization still has connections with that founder. You know, we talk about in the book the how you do this. That's one of the things we talk about, is going back to the earliest days to try to connect with the reason for it coming to life, to find that purpose. It's maybe going out and studying other organizations to understand, similar organizations to understand their purpose, right? You might see some commonality. But as we talked about it and what we found, you know, you fall typically into one of 8 different archetypes. What it's probably important initially is just to understand what's the archetype that we feel like we're part of. And then let's look at organizations that are also part of that. And then we can define what our overarching purpose is.
What is a ideal organization you would say that is completely purpose driven and has shown this is how you do it?
So, God, I have so many.
Oh, I know. That's why I'm making it tough on you.
One of them is what we call the guide. That's the archetype. So, you know, the Mr. Miyagi from the Karate Kid is kind of the symbol of the guide. And so to me, the prototypical guide company is someone like Google, right? And from its earliest days, when the organization came together in the 1990s, was their purpose was simply to take the world's information and make it useful and accessible to all. And so everything that they do, at least for the first 15 to 20 years of the organization, was really guided by that simple purpose. And they do a lot of little things that they kind of eat their own dog food to try to make, again, up until recently, to make things really accessible even for their own employees as it relates to how Google operated. And they did a lot of little things to bring that principle to life.
It's amazing for employees and a workplace culture when they see on the wall and in the actions of their leaders that you have that purpose. And so that everything you do is in relation and in spirit and in service to that one purpose. I see so many people I talk to going, "What's the value of your work?" They're like, "I don't know." How is it connected to what the organization's trying to do? I don't know.
I don't know.
I can't see employees being engaged in a culture where they feel like they are just punching a clock because they're doing what they were told to do that day and not following this vision, this purpose.
So here's the thing. People, research shows this. People identify in 3 different buckets as it relates to what they do. One, at the base level, some people see what they do as a means to an end, literally just a job. It's put food on the table, a roof over my head. I punch the clock, nothing more, nothing less. And that's about a third of people that have that. The middle third are people that see what they do as more of a career. They see a little bit more of a long term, they're invested, they're a little bit more engaged. If you can tap into people that are part of the top third, it's those that have, I would say, almost more of a calling. There's a bigger reason why they do what they do. And those people would almost do what they do even if they weren't being paid. And I love this. If you look at people that work for you almost like volunteers, right? I'm leading a board right now for the National Speakers Association. If you can work with people that are volunteers, there's nothing that's keeping them there, right? Other than feeling that they're tied into something bigger and that they're giving back. And Ted Koine, who wrote the foreword for Green, he said, we need to almost look at our employees as volunteers, right? That they could, and this is so appropriate given where the labor climate is right now, because people have tons of opportunities. I read a stat the other day, 2 out of every 3 people are potentially thinking about their next role right now. So if you're not giving them a reason to feel like they're connected to the organization and part of something, they're going to find it somewhere else.
Thank you, Stan. We're almost out of time, so I have a quick 2 personal questions that I ask all my guests. Ask all my guests. The hell was
Sentient
that?
beings.
All of them. The first question is, what is your best or worst, one story, employee experience you've ever had? I'm always curious because it always has long-term impact. So the best or worst experience.
The best experience I had, I was fortunate. I worked for Adidas or everywhere else in the world that's listening to this, Adidas, for almost 9 years. And a few times I had to kind of pick up and move with the organization. And that could be a rough time. How you kind of guide that is absolutely key. So I think, one of the reasons why I stayed there for 9 years was A, I felt like there was opportunity, but B, I felt like I was being taken care of, especially around, one was a coast to coast move from Portland, Oregon to New York City. And then the second one was actually an overseas move to working in the global offices in Amsterdam. And both times they did a great job of supporting me for those moves. And I look back and I go, that's when you feel like your company has your back and they're acting in your best interest, you do the same for them.
Not just a financial support, but a cultural support too when you're making moves like that. And last question, Stan, right before you walk out that door, what is one simple action people can do right now to improve their relationships at work, either with coworkers, colleagues, leaders, anything?
I think the simple thing is if you're a leader or even if you're a great coworker or teammate, it's scheduling a little bit of time each day in your schedule to just spend a couple minutes to check in on, and maybe write a short note to somebody that's on your team.
Love that. Love that connection. Thank you so much, Stan Phelps. If you want to know more about Stan, well, it's easy. You Google stanphelps.com. Real easy to find him. He's also on Twitter at Stan Phelps PG. What does the PG stand for? Purple Goldfish. The man's written 10 books about it. Thank you, or more, 16. We got up to 16. Thank you so much, Stan, for having the time today, and always a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks, Russell.
Thank you so much for listening. That'll do it for another episode of Relationships at Work. If you want to find out a little bit more about employee experience, think a little differently, I encourage you to check out our Instagram account, Relationships at Work. Also, go to relationshipsatwork.ca. That's where you'll find all the show notes and blogs I've done on the topic of employee experience or customer experience. And very soon, well, I'm going to relaunch my Relationships at Work newsletter. Oh, the content! It's coming. And did I mention we have a community, a private, well, I don't think it's private anymore, a community that you can join on Facebook. It's a nice little way for me to share information and you to ask questions. And hey, we're all here learning. All here learning. And I love that you have that on your brain to make a priority. It just makes the workplace better. I'm Russel Lolacher, and as always, it's been fun.